So hi, today I will be starting the second installment of my sand art series, and what makes today special is that I'll go over a technique. It's a technique that is used, that I actually found that Buddhist monks use when they're creating their sand mandalas. And these sand mandalas, you should totally check it out, are these extremely intricate, gorgeous, beautiful masterpieces of art where the monks will, in a very meditative process, create or channel and funnel sand into these designs. And immediately after they've created this thing that has taken them days upon days, maybe weeks upon weeks, they just destroy it. And the reason they destroy it is to sort of symbolize the impermanence of life. It is to sort of symbolize the idea that sometimes you should enjoy the journey because you don't have control over the end product often. And so you should invest your love and appreciation and happiness in those moments that are leading up to the end goal. But it also sort of represents detaching from the material world. You know, don't get too attached on what you create. So there's a lot of beauty in it. And I researched this because I wanted to do a similar sort of ceremony for my hair ceremony when I shaved this all off. So I had done that and it was really pretty awesome. Alright, so this will be the final product. Today's adventures should hopefully lead to the creation of this thing right over here. Now, the actual form of this image over here came to me, or was motivated, after I read a book, many, many years ago. And this book was written by a yogi, a person that meditates a lot, and he was talking about his teacher. And he described that as his teacher reached these higher levels of meditation, that his eyes would be sort of half open and half closed. And that represented something which I thought was pretty cool. And the basic idea here is that half of your eye is open during this intense meditation to continuously receive that sensory input from the world outside, because the world outside is beautiful. There's complexity, there's beauty, there's a dynamicness to it that you can use to create anything that you want to. And I like the idea of sort of still being embedded, in the earth, not being completely detached even during meditation itself. But then you've got half the eye which is closed, and that represents the second half of your consciousness, which is actually inside. It's embedded in your brain, in your imagination, in your creativity, so that you can have, in this form, a synthesis of the outside world with the inside world. A place where you can superimpose your creativity, your ideas, your thoughts, whatever you want, on top of sort of this reality which you cannot control. So it's really a contrast of two different things. Things that you cannot control with things that you can control. It's a pretty cool idea. Alright, so as you can see, I've taken my cardboard box. It's a former cereal box, and I just flipped it over and I applied the glue, and I've anchored it down so that the glue doesn't cause the stuff to deform. And the next thing I'm going to do is fill up my cartridge. So the tool I'm going to be using, this is just from an old mechanical pencil, and what I did was I chopped off this top, which released this, and I took this and I took a file and I filed these ribs into it so that when I fill this up with sand, I can just rub it like this. And this does two things. It creates a sort of acoustical noise, which is almost like a chant that is awakening your spiritual being, but it also sort of creates these vibrations, and the vibrations allow the sand to sort of pour out in a controlled manner. And what I use to sort of fill this is just a piece from an old catalpa tree from my backyard, and I scoop it into the sand, and then I just fill this all the way up, and then I just let it come out. So 1 second. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make the outline of the eye. So I'll just start maybe somewhere over here, and then you can see that it's a very beautiful process. You can see that you can get into a sort of meditative trance-like state. Sometimes if you want to accomplish something in life, you just have to make a conviction, but making that conviction is very difficult. And so what you can do is be like, you know, like if you want to go work out or something, and you just feel like giving up. So what you can do is, with every stroke of this barrel, you be like, you know what, I'm going to go work out and I'm not going to give up. And you sort of repeat that goal over and over again, and the longer you sort of repeat it, the stronger your desire to do it will become, and maybe the less likely you will be to succumb to laziness or not wanting to do it. So there you go. There's the overall look of the eye. I'm going to fill up my cartridge again. And now I'm going to sort of make the eyelid portion of it. I'm going to try to make this as fine as possible. So maybe I'll get a little bit closer. And, you know, I like how the earth from my backyard is what is making the boundaries of this eye. In a way, it's kind of neat that the backyard is the boundary. Usually the earth is something that represents property or boundaries, things like that. That's kind of cool. Okay, there you go. There's the eyelid, and now I'm going to just quickly make the pupil area. And in many ways, this also has a secondary symbolic representation as just a sun that might be setting or rising. So that's really cool as well. Okay, there you go. So now it's up to you whatever colors you want to use. For the pupil, I think today I'll use a bright red color, and it's going to be just solid red with no mixes or anything like that. And it will represent the setting sun. And you'll see that that'll add a pretty nice brilliance to the whole thing. So I'll just come in here. Very nice. And the next question is, well, what color do I want for the sun to be submerged in? And today I think I'll pick a beige color, and the beige color will represent the blushed sky, a sky that is transitioning from day to night, and it has that beautiful kiss of the longer wavelength light, just maybe right before sunset. And in a way, these sort of lines of sand represent crops. If you think about earth that you are breaking and then trying to plant things in, these are like rows. And that's a neat idea, because a lot of this is just like planting and germinating ideas. The Buddhist monks will be chanting right now, so I usually like to, in my mind, repeat whatever I want to accomplish, or maybe have interesting thoughts, but you could totally put on some nice music and just merge with that. The last thing I'll do over here now is maybe a strong purple color, and what that strong purple color will represent is the midnight sky, the descent of night once the sunset has happened. So in a certain way, the temporal order starts from the bottom and raises up to the top. So you've got the day at the bottom, and then you've got the sunset, and then you've got this sort of midnight sky, which is kind of a neat way of doing it. And it just falls right into place. like a bunch of marching ants. There you go. Now I've got something special planned for the boundaries. There are two things that you could do with the boundary. You could add very intricate patterns, which I probably will not do today. Or what I'm planning to do is add sort of like a noisy background, and I'll show you kind of how I do that. But essentially what I'll do is I'll salvage sand which has been wasted, which has fallen off other projects, and has mixed with different colors. Okay, there we go. So the overall goal is to have light color on the top and darker color on the bottom for contrast. So if we turn our head here, you can see that I've had some waste sand over here. This is from the last project, and it's sort of fallen. And what I can do is, if I sort of mix it, I can get this really interesting dark noisy color. I'll have to add a little bit of my own sort of red. This is just nice, like, mixing stuff, and maybe I'll add a little bit of purple. And usually I don't have to add extra stuff. Usually I have enough in there, and then you can just sort of mix it around, get you really interesting colors. I got a little green in there, which is tons of fun. Just let everyone join the party. I'm always for inclusive parties, because then you can get all sorts of interesting colors and peoples interacting. There we go. Look at that. So I'm going to scoop that guy up. 1 second. And now, like a beautiful waterfall of snow, this will come down, and I think you can already begin to see that this has a very dynamic feel to it. It almost has a feeling of movement inside of it, because there's so many of these different colors interacting. It almost has sort of like a molecular thermodynamic feel, where just everything is jiggling around. And that's a neat contrast to the eye, which seems to be very solid, very stationary in place. Sort of have a very kinetic energy, which is this stuff here, and potential energy, which is things in the eye. And together they can create the entire law of the conservation of energy, which is actually one of my most favorite, in fact the favorite law in all of physics, is that in a closed and isolated system, energy can be neither created nor destroyed. Alright, and then the top part will be a little bit brighter, so I'm going to use a lot of this. This is the Cape Cod sand, but I'll also mix a little bit of some of this yellow and beige, and then just sort of mix it around with the older sand to get this much more dynamic, I don't know how well you can see it, color. So now I'll apply this. And again, most of this sand over here is all runoff sand. And I think it's really beautiful that even though this is what some people might term as the waste product, that I'm using this for something beneficial. Nature, in my opinion, is a very circular thing, so you really don't have anything like waste. You know, things will poop, and to them it will be a waste, but there are other organisms that absolutely adore that poop and will eat it up like it's chocolate. One of my happiest moments in life was when I saw a real-life dung beetle. It was something that I wanted to see ever since I saw them on a nature show. And then I was sitting in India one day, and bam, there was just these two cute dung beetles. Usually in our lives, things seem very linear. You consume it and then you just throw it away, but I think that's a very bad place to be. So that's why I try to reuse this sand so that it has a purpose, so that nothing is wasted. Alright, almost done. Alright, and then time to see how it looks like. It's pretty good. And so sort of the only real problem with this is that when I applied the glue, I waited for too long, and the glue, you know, I put the sand over here, so this was absorbed fast, but these were the later portions of it, and you can see that in the absence, there are pockets of areas where the glue, you know, was not there. And so you do get this sort of spotty look. It's not as, it sort of reduces the beauty of it, or the strength of what it's trying to show. But it's still pretty cool. So I would recommend that if you were to do this, make sure your layer of glue is very uniform and thick. Also, I should say, so the pockets that were existing over here, I was very unsatisfied with. So I went and I put some glue there, and I applied more sand, and then it started looking even worse because you had these elevated pockets of sand, and I didn't know what to do. So I put these very thick, aggressive lines of glue just horizontally across, and then I just put large amounts of sand there. And I think this actually turned out to be quite nice now. So I was able to salvage it, which is a lot of what life is about in art.